If you look at a map of global trade and start eliminating the vast oceans, your eye eventually zooms in on a tiny sliver of water between the Persian Gulf and the Gulf of Oman. Roughly 1/5 of the world's daily oil consumption moves through this single passage. Any disruption here causes an immediate chain reaction. Global stock markets panic, central banks light up, and militaries mobilize fleets. The friction point here usually involves Iran and the United States. Regional military drills and targeted sanctions mean shipping routes are constantly flanked by naval assets aimed directly at commercial tankers. A localized standoff in this specific body of water immediately drives up the cost of a shipping container headed for Rotterdam, which inflates the price of groceries in London or Tokyo. The entire global economy runs on a very fragile geographic leash. Before this, nations fought over coal, but petroleum offered entirely new levels of efficiency. It made ships faster, let planes fly, and allowed dense forests of derricks to power mass industrialization. The problem for most of the world was where this fuel was located. The richest, most easily accessible reserves were heavily concentrated in the Middle East. Major powers quickly grasped a stark reality. If your economy requires a specific resource to function, and that resource is sitting halfway across the globe, national security requires securing that supply chain by any means necessary. The United States realized this early. American diplomats cultivated deep alliances with Gulf nations, ensuring the flow of this wealth aligned with Western interests. Washington took it a step further, standardizing the trade. To buy oil from major producers, nations must pay using U.S. dollars. This permanently tethers global energy demand to American currency, pulling the dollar up alongside it. Because every central bank on Earth is forced to stockpile dollars to buy energy, the United States gains immense financial leverage, allowing it to dictate global trade terms and borrow money at discounted rates. For the U.S., securing the Middle East is about protecting the structural foundation of their own financial empire. Moscow employs its massive land-based energy reserves as an instrument of direct physical leverage. Over decades, Russia built massive physical tethers straight into neighboring European countries. They established an export model that made massive industrial economies deeply reliant on a single land-based source. When a nation relies on a powerful neighboring rival to keep its factories running and its homes heated, any diplomatic dispute carries the immediate threat of economic collapse. Russia effectively turned raw infrastructure into a geopolitical weapon. They proved that the mere threat of closing a valve can successfully paralyze the foreign policy decisions of entire continents. China faces a specific structural dilemma. As the primary manufacturing engine for the globe, their energy consumption is staggering, yet they lack the domestic supply to match it. To survive this massive deficit, China is pouring billions of dollars into foreign infrastructure. They are actively building ports, funding new railways, and transit hubs across multiple continents to lock down raw materials. They must build these networks because most of their imported oil travels along oceanic routes that rival navies could easily blockade in a conflict. Every foreign investment and territorial claim China makes is rooted in a defensive reality, preventing their energy lifelines from being severed by outside forces. The maneuvers of global superpowers manifest directly in the prices on every grocery receipt and monthly bill. When diplomatic talks fail and supply is threatened, shipping costs explode. And because every physical product requires fuel to reach a shelf, a localized shortage quickly becomes widespread consumer inflation. A country completely removed from the geopolitical maneuvering will still watch its domestic manufacturing stall and its food prices spike if global shipping lanes are compromised. Governments treat energy markets with obsessive care because an energy crisis inevitably leads to restless populations, economic stagnation, and severe political instability. With massive investments pushing the world toward renewable grids, it raises the question of whether this geopolitical tug-of-war will finally end. The transition is underway, but the staggering scale required to replace current infrastructure means global aviation, maritime shipping, and heavy industry will remain reliant on fossil fuels for decades. And the nations currently reaping massive profits from oil are already using that capital to buy up the rare earth minerals and grids required for the next era of power. The specific technology we use to generate electricity will evolve, But the underlying rule of global dominance is permanent. Whoever secures the energy secures the power.